4 years ago, almost to the date, I was facing housing insecurity. About to be out on the street without a job. And I made the decision to call my parents and say to them that I felt that they owed helping me because of the PTSD that they've caused me from my upbringing. In fact, when I got diagnosed for PTSD in 2019, the psychiatrist that I saw, his reaction to my description of my upbringing was that it had happened more recently, that he would have recommended that I get a lawyer. For reference, I was homeschooled all the way from birth until age 19 under Christian fundamentalists, borderline Christian nationalists. About 90%, and that's generous, I could say 95%, but 90% is what I'll say. 90% of my total my total social contact was just my family inside of that house. There was a brief time that they tried me in a public school, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd grade, something like that, where it was overstimulating, it was too much, I didn't know anything about being around other kids. And in those 2 weeks, I just said, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. I was a child. I had no concept of having to struggle in order to get past things. And this was not assisted by my parents' parenting style. I never learned to ride a bike because the moment I got on a bike and it fell over once, I said, I don't want to do this. And they said, oh, you don't have to try again. I never learned how to swim because the one time I got water in my nose, I said, I don't want to do this again. And they said, okay, you never have to try again. But I'm losing track. So yes, so they briefly tried me at public school. That didn't work. They had, I suppose some of this will be no more natural discussing it alongside this video. But anyway, housing insecurity in 2022. And I told my parents that I felt that they owed me for the damage that they've done to my life. But my parents are not the kind to admit fault. Not really, anyway. They say, oh, maybe we shouldn't have homeschooled you. Maybe that was a mistake. %. Let me start this video.
using my screen cap because the weather's warmer again, and it's
I mean, something I'll mention while she's blabbering about springtime and new beginnings. Well, you know, cutesy, I'm a cute grandmother on YouTube nonsense.
I hope you are well, and I just want to again thank everybody for
My friend found this video, the video that you hear the audio of. I don't have the actual visual video of it because my friend saw this text update you see at the top left. I moved the earlier video to membership only because there was concern expressed that someone in particular would see it and react. Me. So this text update is about the audio that you're hearing. So my friend saw this text update and knew from the context, because my friend knew my life. She knew the psychological abuse that I suffered under this woman. So when my friend saw this text update and was like, huh, membership only, what is that? What is this video? That someone in particular would see it and react. My friend figured it was me. So my friend paid the $2.99 to be a member in order to see this video. And this video is entirely about me. This beginning part is just she's doing her I'm a cute Christian grandmother business. But clearly she knew this video with this audio, as you'll see soon enough, was problematic. She knew it was problematic enough that she was worried that I would see it. And she knew it was problematic and that I might see it. So she hid it by putting it to membership only. She didn't remove it. And again, someone expressed there was concern. People concerned, I don't know how many people expressed concern, but clearly there was concern expressed. And her response was not to delete the video. It was not to take down the video. It was to hide it from me behind a $2.99 paywall, which God knows how many people actually paid that. I know my friend did. Bless her heart. Because she knew that it was something that she could feel it. And she was right. So the audio that you're hearing right now, so my friend saw the video. My friend actually went back and forth on whether she would tell me what this video was, or even show it to me, because it was so disturbing to her. But after, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, I forget how many days or weeks it was after, but my friend couldn't hold this in to herself anymore. She felt I needed to know what this was. But my friend called out the video. She commented on it and called my mother out on her abuse. And that's when she removed the video. That's when she deleted the video. So, why don't I have the visuals of the video? Because this is the audio that was ripped from my friend's security camera footage of her living room. Because my friend had a security camera in her living room always going. So this audio is actually from the security recording footage of her living room where she watched this on the TV, and that's what you're hearing now. That's why it's not perfect audio, but here we go. I will be pausing at times.
So, my mother used to have a saying, and she would say, when your children are little, they step on your toes. And when your children are older, they step on your heart. And my heart's been trampled on. Not just stepped on, but trampled and stomped. You name it. It's been like steamrolled numerous times. And so one of the reasons that I have not been well is because this has been so heavy on my heart that it has affected my health. And I made the decision yesterday that I would change the comment section to where I would have to approve each comment before it becomes public because of the turn of events, the progress of things, and I really didn't want my son to come on and start saying all sorts of irrational, angry, hurtful things.
So I'll pause it right there. I'm going to go ahead and show you the footage of what she is describing, which is when I publicly on her live stream wrote comments calling her out for her psychological abuse and for having ruined my life more than once. So I'll go ahead and play that now.
Please. Ooh, hot fudge ice cream cake. That sounds good. That sounds good. They used to have at Baskin Robbins years ago. They had mud pie, and it was like a graham cracker crust, and then it was like coffee ice cream, layers of coffee ice cream, and hot fudge and whipped cream, I think. I've seen those stores, Jane, or is the store? Yeah, but I've never had anything there. So you're hungry again? I see you. Hello. I'm blowing you a kiss after math equation. I'm sorry. All's talk about food. I know. All right. I'm not sure how to block somebody. I don't know. Well, we were bound to get someone like this, so my apologies, folks. I don't quite know how to get rid of people. But you click on the person and block. I'm not sure how to do that. No, participants, I went to there and don't know. So okay, we'll just keep going. We'll just roll with it. We'll roll with it. Okay, click on the name in the chat. Okay. Let's see. Hide user on this. So this is hide user. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. I guess that's what it is. Okay. I guess that's what it is. Okay. Thank you. Oh, I know. Oh, sorry, I don't know what episode that was. Okay. Oh. Okay. Well, okay. I don't know if that means like block or just okay. Because it didn't say block. It said, let's see, where did it say? Like it has the little dots. It says hide user on this thing. Okay. Okay. Well, let's just forget about that right now. Okay? Yes, let's forget about it. Let's get back to the pie.
All right, now that we're back from that,
So that is why I've kind of made, I've kind of spoken about it in a very kind of vague term, but I think the time is to speak more openly about it because I'm sure that I'm not the only mother and my husband's not the only father that deals with these things. And we are at a very difficult place, let's say. It's hard to even, it's even more difficult than difficult. I don't even know what the word is. So what happened, what it is, as you know, we have 4 children, and we have 3 girls, and we have 1 son, and he's the youngest. He's in his 30s, and he is brilliant, and he is so talented, but he is also mentally ill.
I'll pause it right there. So, I have autism, severe ADHD, the aforementioned PTSD, and also MDD, which is major depression. PTSD diagnosis was 2019, as I mentioned before. The MDD diagnosis was 2023, when I almost acted out on a plan that would have ended things. I sought treatment instead. Lighting of this is... Alright. When she mentions that I was mentally ill, it's important to note that I was a late speaking child by about 2 years. And despite clear signs of autism, countless signs, instead they didn't have me. I mean, granted, I will say it was the 90s and the early 90s when I was a child. I turned 19 in 2008. So autism diagnoses weren't exactly handed out very often, and they were certainly not handed out very often while I was being homeschooled, where, again, I was barely in the outside world, outside of martial arts classes and some other homeschooling events. But even the homeschooling events ended in my late teens because our family had a falling out with all the other homeschooling families. But instead of seeing signs of autism and trying to get an evaluation, they did see signs of something, because instead they subscribed to the writings of a conservative economist who doesn't study children, is not a doctor, is not a psychiatrist, is not a psychologist, but he was a conservative economist who decided to write 2 books on late-speaking children, one of which was called The Einstein Syndrome, which the theory was, and there's no such thing as the Einstein Syndrome, it's not a medically accepted term at all. But the Einstein Syndrome, the idea of it was, oh, your child is showing some signs of potential autism? No, it's not autism. They'll actually grow up to be well-adjusted geniuses, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So clearly they understood there were signs of autism, and clearly they did not take me to a specialist to get me evaluated for potential autism. I don't know if it was just they didn't want to think of the possibility of me having a disability, or they would just rather believe I'm just going to become a well-adjusted genius, which for whatever one might say about someone who has been a math professor, there are math professors that have autism. I was one of them. Anyway, I'll go pushing play.
And he had the same childhood the girls had, and
Which I'll pause there. I'll just mention. So I have 3 older sisters. She mentioned the 3 daughters, 1 son. I have 3 older sisters. The oldest 2 are twins. The twins went to high school. They were homeschooled up until high school, and then they were in high school until college. Whereas me and the other sister were homeschooled from birth until college. I mean, again, other than that brief trial at 2nd or 3rd grade. But that really does not count in any way, shape, or form. In fact, if I remember correctly, I mean, I was extremely young. I mean, I remember there was a disgusting chicken sandwich in a sandwich bag that I had. I think it was really only I was there for 2 days. And it was too much. That was another reason why they should have known that I had autism or something of that nature, because I just said it was too much. I didn't like it, and they just took me out of school and homeschooled me again, and they didn't bring me to a specialist to get me evaluated in any way, shape, or form. I mean, granted, I understand it was the early 90s, but I was autistic.
for a few years, my husband and I had a lot of arguing, and we had some trouble and all that.
They almost got
but
divorced
we
once.
tried to keep it status.
They almost got divorced once because apparently this is before I remember, but my sisters remember. Apparently my mom was borderline cheating, talking to men online, which I know is insane because it was the mid-90s, but my parents have always been technologically savvy. I mean, my mom had a YouTube channel with 4,000 subscribers, and she's a grandma in her mid-60s. They've always been technologically savvy. I mean, even back in the day, for those who remember, before Facebook, before MySpace, there was a social media platform called Xanga, Xanga, and my mom had a Xanga. I mean, she was writing HTML code for little widgets and customizing the whole thing, because it wasn't a social media platform in that there was friends and add friends. It was literally just you could put in HTML widgets and you could write links to other people's Zangas. So like that was how you were friends on Zanga, was you linked each other's Zangas with like HTML code. But my mom has always been technologically savvy. But yeah, apparently in early mid-90s, she was, and they almost got divorced, but they've been together ever since, so they fixed that. In fact, one of my earliest memories on this planet, in this existence, was how much yelling there was. How much yelling there was. Because I distinctly remember, and I remember doing it. I was so upset and distressed over all the yelling, and I was so young, I didn't know what to do. So I literally took a pillow and started smothering my own face with it until they stopped. That's how much distress. I couldn't have been, I certainly wasn't 10 years old. I don't know. I mean, I can't say, this is like one of the earliest memories. I don't remember how old I was, but I just know that I just started smothering myself as a child because I just wanted the arguing to stop. And in difficult times, hurting myself in some way has always been I've never been violent towards another person, which she lies about this later. The worst thing that I've ever done was I took a pillow and I threw it against the wall so that nobody would be hit and that nothing would be broken. So that was my earliest memory of existence.
Time, and I'm sure it affected the children to some extent, but no more so than my son and the girls. And apart from that, I think it was kind of an idyllic childhood.
An ideal childhood.
Children, of course, will say that they were probably too sheltered because I
Probably.
was always so paranoid that they would be sexually abused like I was for many years, and I'm so afraid of that.
My mom was abused by her grandfather throughout her teenage years. And that is beyond, I mean, I was psychologically abused. I was never physically abused. I was never sexually abused. Which, in fact, a few years ago, in a text exchange with my sister Sarah, she made a point to highlight, you weren't sexually abused, Josh. When I never alleged sexual abuse, I alleged psychological abuse. So the emphasis of her sentence was, oh, well, it's not like you got sexually abused. Like somehow psychological abuse. I mean, I understand the sexual abuse is worse because it's both. It's psychological and it's physical and it's sexual. But to use that, and there wasn't even anything in that conversation back and forth with her that even brought up the idea or the notion of sexual abuse. So it was literally just, well, your psychological abuse, it wasn't sexual abuse, it diminished it. That's one of the reasons why that relationship with my sister Sarah is dead and gone, amongst other reasons. But that sticks out in my mind as one of the most, I just don't, why? And this sister has PTSD as well, I will mention. Granted, I don't recall exactly what the PTSD stems from, but I believe, my sisters have had their issues with our parents as well. My sister Anna also has PTSD. Again, I don't remember the exact stage. I haven't talked to my sisters in years because they are warped in their own ways. I'm warped in my own ways. I do, however, feel that I'm the one who has spent over 15. Let's see. Yeah. 15 plus years in therapy, seeing psychologists, seeing counselors, seeing psychiatrists, because I understood that in order to deal with my trauma, I had to face it head on. I had to speak truth to myself and to the world. And it took me a long time because of how, when 90% of your life is controlled in every way, shape, or form by your parents. And I didn't have a window to the outside world. In the 90s and the early 2000s, any internet usage that I used had to be physically next to them. I mean, there were some brief times where, on the family computer while they're not looking, whatever, but when it was like, oh, it's your time to have the internet for an hour, it was pull up the laptop, sit next to us on the couch. There was no privacy. There was no privacy. And it was completely controlled. I didn't know anything but the version of Christianity that they filled my entire world with. And when it comes to the trauma that my mother had regarding sexual abuse, what that resulted was an extreme sheltering, extreme homeschooling, extreme social isolation, which did not allow for me to learn social skills, especially as an undiagnosed, untreated autistic ADHD kid. But when watching TV, when watching movies, whenever characters would kiss, or whenever there was a sex scene, I mean, the sex scenes got skipped. Those got fast forwarded altogether. Kissing, I was expected, and not only was I expected to, but I developed the reflex to do this. That when people would start kissing, it was expected of me, and I would do it. I didn't know anything else. It was what I was taught was right to do. Whenever characters on the TV kissed, I had to look away. So as soon as there was kissing, I would just have to, stare at the left side of the room, wait for it to, and then they would let me know. They'd say, Josh, you can look again. I mean, my sex education consisted of my dad explaining, this is how pregnancy happens, and sex outside of marriage is a sin. And there is actually a verse in the Bible, I forget exactly which one, I would have to look it up, maybe I'll put it on the screen, the reference, where in the Bible it does say that if you have even lusted after a woman in your heart, it is the same as committing adultery. It is the same as cheating on your married spouse. And what that translated to them was that viewing pornography or just even really fantasizing about anyone was equivalent to adultery. That's how far they took that. That's how far they took that. I mean, when I turned 19 and I went to college, the first meeting on the college dorm floor, so everybody from my college dorm floor were meeting for the first time, the RA and everybody, and everybody could say hi to each other, learn who's on the floor. And at 19, and this is 2008, someone made a joke that involved the word boner at some point. College students. And in front of everybody on my floor, the first time everybody's meeting, the first time everybody is building impressions of each other. I say, what's a boner? Because even though I understood what the concept of an erection was, I did not know what a boner, because I never even run into the term boner. You can imagine that I was bullied for the rest of my time at that college. But she does bring up more college stuff. I'll speak more about it then. But it was the paranoia and the fear from the abuse that she suffered. And the abuse that she suffered is far worse than anything I ever experienced under her. I was never sexually abused. I was never physically abused. But the extreme sheltering had its effects. And not all of them were positive.
They did homeschool, but they were involved in churches, in Sunday school, in Awana Club, and we were very, my head is just like, it's kind of like you shut down when things happen. But we were very involved We were very involved in the homeschool support group. We had friends. We had
Until my
clubs,
mid-teenage years.
We had friends of age. We did park days where we met.
We had friends my age. I had maybe one friend, and a kid named Kenny. And I think I was just so, thinking back and looking back and knowing, what I know now about my autism, I don't even know if I was even, directly friends with him. I think it was more that just, they tolerated bringing me over so that I had a friend. But I don't remember, maybe we would take turns playing video games back then, me and Kenny, but it was but there wasn't it wasn't really, it was two little kids just kind of coexisting in the same room. To call that friends my age is disingenuous.
Sometimes once a week we would have classes.
Sometimes once a week.
We'd have art classes, or drama classes, or things like that. We didn't see any signs of mental illness initially.
So that's a lie, because of the I was a late speaking child. They literally had books about late speaking children. They were aware. This is not something that they were because it's one thing if they didn't understand what they were seeing, but they knew they were seeing something to the point that they had 2 entire books of how to think about their late speaking child. So that's false.
And when he was young, he was a late talker.
Okay, there we go.
He really didn't start speaking in English until he was about close to 4. And we did take him to a speech therapist, and
I don't remember the speech therapist. Maybe I was just too young and I don't remember. I don't remember the speech therapist.
We had heard and read that sometimes children that are very, very smart, they don't speak initially. And plus the fact that he had 4 mothers, because the 3 girls were older than him, plus me. And of course, if he wanted some apple juice, he knew how to express that, and one of the girls or I would get an apple juice. So, but he did work through that, and he was fine. And
So fine.
every year we went physicals every year, the dentist twice a year. He did have some food allergies, went to the allergist, went to dermatologist, everything. We did everything we were supposed to do.
except get me evaluated by a child psychologist. But again, it was the 90s. Things were much more dicey back then in terms of things, but the late speaking children books do mention that it looks like autism. Like it's, oh, these kids look like autism, but it's actually not, and they'll actually turn out to be well-adjusted. Like, they knew there was something, and instead of going to an expert, they chose to believe a conservative economist, who does not have any kind of medical credentials in the field at all.
And he was kind of, I mean, it's hard for me to know, as having 3 girls and then a boy, what is off, maybe. But he was a child that he loved to read. He loved to do,
maybe I loved to read as a child. I don't quite remember that, in all honesty. Certainly my entire life that I can remember, my ADHD is the sort that I will read a sentence, and then I'll get stuck on that sentence, and I'll have to read it again and again and again, and then I just give up. With some notable exceptions. The Harry Potter books, I could devour. The Lord of the Rings books in my teenage years, I could devour. But by and large, I mean, from most of what I can remember, I just don't, even in college, I got a math degree and I barely touched the textbooks because my brain got too bored and wanted to think about other things.
building Legos and Transformers, and he had an active imagination, and he liked to write stories. And so he was never one into sports much.
I did mention earlier the not learning to bicycle. I did mention earlier the not learning to swim. Sports, I honestly don't, like, they didn't try me in baseball or basketball or soccer. I mean, they did put me in martial arts in my teenage years, but that's the closest thing to a sport I can think of that they actually even tried me on.
And that was fine. We didn't push him. For that. And then, as he got older, as he got to his teenage years,
I volunteered at the library because all 3 of my sisters volunteered at the library, and then I eventually worked at the library.
He volunteer work. He worked at the library from the time he was 15 until he was like 17. He took, oh my goodness, probably 5 years of martial arts as black belt in Taekwondo, a black belt in Gumdo. That's one with the stick.
It's a sword martial art.
He got very good grades, and he was, I guess I know that boys can be kind of immature compared to girls their age.
That's
So
just a reality. Girls mature faster than boys.
He took a year of, your basic courses at community college. He did well. He did very well. But he really wanted to go away to college. He wanted that experience.
I wanted the experience of going away to college. I mean, I had no social skills. I had no friends. Especially since this stuff with the other homeschooling families, even though again, Kenny and I were not even really ever truly friends. But in my mid-teenage years, we had a falling out with the other homeschool families. And my sisters all went to college. So, given that my sisters were like 2 years older than me and 4 years older than me, more or less, when the twins went away to college, It was just me and my other sister. And then when she went to college, it was just basically me and mom at home because dad was always at work. And I didn't have friends. I didn't know how to socialize because I went to martial arts, and there was some amount of, I guess you could call, socialization there, but that was a few times a week for an hour. And I wasn't, some popular kid there. I mean, I wasn't alone in a corner, but I wasn't socialized. I don't consider that socialization.
So we said, go apply. So he applied and was accepted into the honors program at a very good university. And he was excited to go. We were excited for him to go. And my husband moved him in, and I don't know what happened there. All I know is I did meet
The Boner incident, being bullied. I had a spider thrown at me because people knew I was afraid of spiders. I would walk past open doors of dorm rooms, hearing people joking about me. My roommate told me that I won gold at the Awkward Olympics. When one of my sisters visited and was in the women's restroom, she heard girls in there joking about me. I was the building joke. I was the building joke. That's what happened.
once or twice, and he was one of those people that you
So she
said
thinks my roommate was
something
evil.
about. I know, people are gonna say, oh, this is, but
To be, one thing I will say, to be fair, this was at a university where shortly thereafter, there was a very prominent, nationally prominent suicide by somebody who got severely bullied, and that was before the anti-bullying the nationwide anti-bullying campaigns happened. Was because of a suicide at that specific university. So I was there in the times of probably maximum bullying, because anti-bullying was not even a thing. It was not a thing until shortly after I was there. Not while I was there, but like a year or two later, I think.
a radar for that to some extent, and I think it's just because
So my roommate was a grade A asshole, but evil.
and I couldn't put my finger on it, but my son wasn't in college more than 2 months when things went downhill. He became, very irrational, and I know that that's the age that a lot of times.
So why did I become upset and irrational? Well, number one, I had been undiagnosed, untreated, autistic, ADHD. I had no idea. I was not socialized well enough. That is all going to create at a place with some insane levels of bullying. I think that's gonna it got to me. I tried to stay positive. I tried to make friends. But it would be remiss to skip over what happened shortly before I went to college, because there was a moment where my parents told me that they were not going to allow me to go at all. Even though I had been accepted, even though the plan was for me to go, they almost did not let me go at all. Why? Because they had discovered the tracking software on the family computer that at 19, I had viewed adult material, pornographic material, and there is, pornographic material is not all one thing. I promise you that this was not some kind of weird, crazy material, illegal material. This was legally produced material by adult women, by not even two people, just one. And through tracking software, they had discovered I had viewed it 3 times. And that was enough for them to say, we're not going to let you go to college at all. Which obviously devastated me because, college was my future. College was the possibility of making friends. At least this is what it was in my head. That college was making friends. College was learning how to socialize. College was learning how to get a job and make a living and live in the world. To grow up. Well, after they had decided, oh, you're not going, like a day or two later, I guess they talked about it. And they told me, okay, you can go, but you have to get good grades, which is that's fair enough. They said I had to make Christian friends. I had to go to church. I'm trying to think, was there another one? I think maybe it was I had to thrive. I don't, that one I'm not sure about, but regardless, one thing that I should mention, and earlier my food allergies were mentioned, I'm allergic to a fair number of foods, and I was very skinny back then. I've most of my life had an extremely fast metabolism, and that combination of things with a college dorm, with a college dining hall that was subpar, to be favorable towards it. The food was terrible. Sometimes the pasta wouldn't even be fully cooked, which is one of the foods that like I eat the most, even to this day, is pasta. But most dishes had some kind of dairy in it that I'd ask, the chef, I have food allergies. Can you make food separately and differently for me? But any time that I went to the dining hall with, like, say, a bunch of people, I would have to go tell the cook to do it differently for me. By the time that the cook had done the food differently for me, the people had come with had already picked their food from the dining hall, had already sat down and already eaten it. So that in and of itself was socially isolating. So quite a few times what I would do is just get whatever that was there that I could eat, whether it was like just salad or just pasta, even though it was half cooked. To give you an idea of how bad this dining hall was, somebody once got a pancake that had a duct tape in it. How duct tape gets in a pancake is beyond me, but this was not a quality dining hall. Food was not a very easily food was difficult for me. And when you combine that with the anxiety and the pressure and the overstimulation of an entire world that I was not prepared for and did not understand and did not know, to be around so many people that I didn't know, I began to lose weight. My grades were doing okay. I was reasonably a smart cookie, but when it came to everything else, the stress and the anxiety and everything caused me to start losing weight. When I started losing weight, my parents got concerned, and any set of parents should be concerned when their already skinny kid is losing weight. There's nothing wrong with that. But the approach that they took was things like, when I visited home once or twice, the first thing they would have me do when walking in the door was, Josh, step on the scale. Like, literally, like, just not even, hello, not even, how are you, not even, just step on the scale. And what ultimately broke that semester, while I was only there for 2 months, was because the week before Halloween, they told me, you have 1 week to gain or maintain weight, or we're pulling you out of college. I was so terrified of that I forced myself to eat, and forced myself to eat, and forced myself to eat. I would eat an entire big bag of chips, and then eat half a bag of pretzels, way beyond being full. Way beyond being full. I would be full after a plate of spaghetti, and I would make myself another plate of spaghetti. Because I was terrified, and I didn't want to, it felt like my entire future was figuring out how to make it work at college, which isn't the reality for everyone, but I was a homeschooled kid who didn't know anything else. I need to escape. Being sucked back into just living at home was something that I was trying to survive. I mean, for years leading up to that, I had dreamt of what life outside of that one house would be like, what it could be. Well, at the end of that week, turns out I did maintain weight. I checked. I did maintain weight. But my dad called and said they're pulling me out of college anyway. So that wasn't even... It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. And ever since then, and certainly I'm much better about this than I was, but certainly my early to mid-20s, not eating and feeling hungry felt like control. Control over something that I had no control over then. All it took to develop that issue was 1 week, one useless week that didn't mean anything to them. That's not going to be acknowledged in her video. That's not going to be. Nope, I mysteriously became mentally ill. Not the background leading to this, not the sheltering, not the lack of socialization, not the lack of being, not admit, the roommate was evil. Nothing about the bullying that I received. Which, by the way, that was my entire world up until my homeschooling, and my family was essentially my entire world up until that point. So that world was treating me terribly. And then being thrown into a world that I became bullied because of that. So the only world I ever knew was abusing me, to the point that the only world that I exited out into was then abusing me. And being undiagnosed, untreated autistic, that was isolating more than anything else. More than anything else. Thrown away from the only world I ever knew, and rejected by the only other world that I knew. So, honestly, it's a miracle that what happened was I just ended up in the mental hospital. In fact, I watched Obama win the presidency from the TV in the mental ward. Which the result of that mental ward was the diagnoses of an adjustment disorder with mild depression. So you tell me why she's painting me as, oh, mental illness. That's when it shows up, is at 19, 20. Give me a break.
That's the age where mental illness hits women, especially with young men.
Yeah, because an adjustment disorder is just something that happens at 19, or mild depression is just and ending up in the mental hospital and my first semester of college going down in flames. That's just something that happens when you're 19, 20 with guys, I guess.
It just became very, very, very troubling. He lost a lot of weight. He took himself into a mental hospital because he wanted to hurt himself, or thought about hurting himself.
I'm trying to remember what phrasing I actually used at the end. I think it was, well, I had stopped eating when I was told I'm being pulled out of college because I didn't gain or maintain weight. I just went into my room and I stopped eating and I just laid in bed. And I laid in bed and I laid in bed and I laid in bed. At some point, I called the campus counselor, which at that point I had already seen like 2 or 3 times because of the anxiety that I was suffering and the depression I was suffering. And I didn't know, I mean, my parents were treating me like this and I didn't know who else to go to. So I started seeing the counselor on campus. I think it might have been her that I called and just said, regardless, I don't remember there ended up being an ambulance that came to take me to the mental hospital. Acute Psychological Services was the name of the place. But, which interestingly enough, what I do remember when I was there was that the counselors and therapists there said that I was very interestingly self-aware in like a third person kind of way. And I honestly, I do think that tracks. I have always had some amount of ability to analyze myself from a third person point of view, just logically speaking. But, make of that what you will, but...
We went and there, we had like a group therapy, whatever you call it, and
whatever it was
be worse because he was at the college with his roommate and it just was a bad situation. And,
it's all the evil roommate.
he was there, I think at least a week.
If I remember correctly, I think it was 15 days. So it was 2 weeks.
We spoke to the doctor and we decided that it would be best for his health because he was very, 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 very thin.
I was 127 pounds at 5'10", which, again, is very, very, very thin. But it's interesting how now is the moment that she's saying, oh, this is when we decided it would be best for his health. No, they decided to pull me out because of the weight thing. And that's what triggered me going to the mental hospital. So let's get that straight. This isn't the moment that they realized, oh, he's very skinny and we need to pull him out. No. That is what led to this.
His body is, what do you call it, the bad index in his body was just like, he was...
And no mention of the anxiety they were causing that led to, in part, the weight loss.
We decided that he needed to live at home, not at the college. He still commuted to the college. We were still paying for it. And we said we would do that. And of course he was extremely angry. And so...
And of course I was extremely angry.
Came home.
Mm-hmm.
And
So, they let me go back the next semester, but only if I commuted. I commuted by train. It was 3 hours of it was a I think, yeah, it was 1.5 hours by train to get there, and 1.5 hours of train to get back at the end of the day. That was all 5 days of the week. That's 3 hours of that's 15 hours of trains a week, by the way. So not exactly ideal transportation.
We thought he was commuting to college.
I was.
Got up and he went on the train and all that, but it turned out he wasn't going to classes.
I wasn't going to classes because at that point, pardon me, my anxiety and depression were off the charts. And given how the first semester went and how I felt hated by every world that I had been in, I would travel by train, and probably, I don't know if it's 80% of the time that there were classes, I would go and sit in a restroom stall and listen to music and play games on my iPod Touch at the time, because I didn't want to be home. But my anxiety and everything was too much to go to the classes. I think I might have failed almost every single class that semester because I just wanted to be alone. And not with my family. And not with bullies either.
Didn't know what he was doing, and we got to the point of saying, okay, we're not going to pay for this university because you aren't going to the classes. There's no point. It was like a lot of money, and the money wasn't the issue. It just didn't make any sense. And so we said, okay, why don't you try and take more courses at community college? We thought, well, okay, maybe, get him well, we can feed him, get him back to like he was before.
And like, there's no admission of the way that they treated me leading up to college. There's no admission of how they treated me while I was at college. There's no admission of how the visit to the mental hospital came to be. It's just all, oh, he turned mentally ill at 19 and his evil roommate. Completely skipping over literally anything they did my entire life up until that point, and those months that led to that. So she's painting it as like, oh, he's just mentally ill and we have to find some way to get him better. But just no admission whatsoever of their part in setting this entire situation up at all.
Oh, they didn't work out too well. And he just became very, very, very angry and belligerent and resentful, and I mean, up to this point, he had said he was a Christian, and then he told us later on, well, actually, this was before, that's after, excuse me. So we did pay for therapy, and what we thought a Christian therapist would be best initially, and because.
So, being Christian was the only thing that was really allowed in that household, as you know, I'll speak about in a bit. But there was no other perspective. There was nobody else in my life that had any other perspective. There was no exposure to any other ideologies. There was no exposure to every single one of my science textbooks, every single one of my Spanish, English, math, everything always had, things thrown in like, oh, isn't God's creation great? Like in a science textbook, I had science textbooks that said that evolution was false, that the fossil record was all a lie, that the Earth was 6,000 years old, and that and that mankind existed at the same time as some of the dinosaurs, which is also not true. There was nothing else. It was, you are a Christian because you are a Christian, and that is the only thing that there is. And and the entire upbringing was, there's us the saved and there's them the sinners. The outside world is them the sinners, and where it's us them, us them, us them, and there was no. I mean, growing up, I'd always, not always, but I never felt the existence or presence of anything spiritual. I just really didn't. I mean, I went to church, I went to Sunday school, there was a Awana Christian club with kids, there was learning of verses, there was reading of the Bible, I read the entire Bible, there was, and my family, my parents were more intellectual about Christianity than I would say than most Christians were. But in my teenage years, and especially my later teenage years, I had the thought in my head. I didn't confess these thoughts to my parents, but in my mid to late teenage years, I had the thought that praying just feels like thinking thoughts in my head that just kind of hit the front wall of my skull and then just disappear. And I began to think, well, what if things just happen? It's not because God is making them happen or making them not happen. It's just things happen. Because I noticed that when you pray for something, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And then I realized, wait a second, what if there is no God? What if this is, but I was still in an environment, in a system, in a house, in a family where Christianity was the belief that you had. And I didn't feel like there was the possibility of trying to be anything else. And in all honesty, even when I was 19, even when I was at college, another thing that I got bullied for was when people, it was a fun joke that the bullies would come up to me and they'd say, oh, would you rather have sex with this woman, this celebrity, or would you rather have sex with this celebrity? And I would say neither, because sex outside of marriage is wrong. It's sinful. Like, I was still someone who's not a Christian, or at least not trying to be, doesn't subject themselves to that. But again, I didn't know anything else. Like, the fact that somebody would ask me that question as a fellow college student is like, you're disgusting, because I did, that was so, again, I was raised looking away from the TV when people kissed. So there's no, like, so I didn't know anything else, but I had already had the seed, the planted seeds of prayer doesn't seem to make a difference either way. But that was in my later teenage years.
And so, of course, that was he wasn't by insurance or anything, but we didn't care. We paid for that. And
the Christian therapist. So again, I was still professing to be Christian. I still thought I was a Christian. I was still trying to be. I didn't necessarily. I had some amount of doubts, but if you're a Christian without doubt, like, doubts are part of, like, nobody is religious without any amount of doubts. Like, there are doubts that happen, even if you believe that it's, like, sent from the devil, or it's to, to test your faith, or I don't know. But their response to that whole hospital visit and everything that went wrong that first semester, with eating and everything else, the bullying, everything else, their response was to get me a Christian counselor who decided that it was correct to tell me that my anxiety and my depression, which I had already begun to understand. After that first semester, I had already begun to understand that the way that my parents had raised me had led to this. I mean, granted, I didn't know how much the autism and ADHD were playing a part, because that wasn't even on my radar. So I there are some parts of the awkwardness and lack of social skills that came about from being autistic. I mean, I couldn't make eye contact until the age of 23. So there's some amount of that was because of the autism and the ADHD, but I that wasn't even a factor in my head, so I blamed 100% on my parents, when maybe 75 to 80% is more the correct percentage, but granted, they don't even acknowledge that. But I had begun to understand that my parents were at fault for at least a fair amount. I mean, I thought it was most or all, but a good deal of what I was dealing with, I was aware enough to realize that was because of my parents and the way that they raised me and the way they treated me. Well, the Christian counselor that they got for me told me that no, my anxiety and my depression are because of sin. It's because of sin, and that I have to find a way to to stop sinning, to repent. And that's what the Christian therapist told me. And I knew deep in my bones, no. At that point I realized, wait a second, you're just calling this all... I mean, if you want to make some kind of Christian argument that me having viewed legal pornography 3 times as a legal adult at the age of 19, if you want to call that sin to the extent that I deserved anxiety and depression, honestly, you can go F yourself. Sorry, that's just that, and that's like the flood happened because there are gays there tier thinking in my mind. And that that I think possibly more than anything else, that snapped me awake to, wait, this could really all just be bullshit. And I didn't want to see the Christian counselor anymore.
Is there, I don't know, I would say 6 months.
I was not with that Christian counselor for 6 months, I'll tell you that. I think maybe 2, maybe 3 meetings, so a couple of weeks at most, not 6 months.
He just told us, he said, well, I'm not a Christian. I was pretending, thinking it all this.
Okay, I'll rewind that real quick.
6 months, but he just told us, he said, well, I'm not a Christian. I was pretending, thinking it all this time.
I never said that. I never said that I was pretending. I never said I was pretending, and I never said I was pretending all that time. Again, if I was pretending all that time, do you really... I mean, granted, it's not like they would have knowledge that I was at college, saying sex outside of marriage is wrong and things of this nature. But I was not... I never said I was pretending. I never said I was pretending. I only vaguely remember what I exactly said, but I do remember the reason. I do remember the reason that I walked away from the faith, which was that I never truly made that choice myself. I never chose Christianity myself, and that in order to even have the possibility of being a real Christian, I had to walk away from the faith entirely in order to figure out if I were actually Christian. Because the only way, I mean, that's the whole point of Christianity, right? It's supposed to be a choice. It's a choice to believe, a choice to accept the gift of salvation, the choice to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior and accept Him into your heart. That's all a choice. That was never a choice growing up. So this saying I pretended is a lie. That is an outright lie. My intent was actually probably the most noble Christian possible way to stop being Christian, which was, if I even want a chance of being the real thing, I have to step outside of it. And the reason why she's rewriting this narrative is because she doesn't want to admit that they forced Christianity on us all those years. She doesn't want to admit it. She doesn't want to admit it.
Okay. It's okay. You don't have to be a Christian. It's okay. We love you. You know, we,
Oh, that's okay. We love you. After I stopped being Christian, it was more or less like I had died to them. That's what it felt like. And for years afterwards, there were conversations of that nature that were like, oh, well, I believe you'll come back to Christ, you'll come back to Jesus, and we'll be together in heaven, and just warped, just like it was as if their son died and they were just hoping that their son would come back to life. But I was still there. I was still a human being. I was still their son. But I was just not their son. Not to them anymore.
we'll get you a different therapist. So we got him a different therapist. And, he seems to be doing better in some ways. And we said, you know, if you don't think you're a Christian, that's fine. You know, we love you, we'll support you, but we don't want you saying anything about our faith. We don't want you to say
The faith that they forced on me.
There was a point where he was saying, you know, F Jesus, F God, you're horrible people.
That's false. That is outright false. I did not use the F word. I did not. In fact, I distinctly remember that probably about 2 times did I ever actually hear the F word said out loud in that household my entire life. And they were used in extreme situations, like, for example, someone in my mother's family regarding the abuse that she suffered growing up, in which case, F them. But this was not a household that I was raised to curse in. It was not. I didn't learn to curse. Up until I think it was like 23 years old, 22 or 23. Up until that point, I prided myself as, even though I became an atheist, I prided myself on the fact that I didn't curse. So that's a lie.
All this stuff. To the point where he was saying, you know, F Jesus, F God, you're horrible people, and all this stuff. And we just couldn't, it was very difficult to know what to do, because our God is very real to us. And our God is, we love God, but we also love our son. So it was very hard to do. And then you throw in the fact that he didn't want to, somewhere along the lines, he said that the psychiatrist at the mental hospital said that we were being cruel to him by not letting him watch porn.
I'm trying, like, it certainly wasn't a psychiatrist at the mental hospital. That I know, that much I know. It may have been the therapist that was after the Christian therapist, which, by the way, there's a little bit more background information that she kind of skips over and glazes over. When there was the Christian therapist who told me it was my sin, and I said I didn't want a Christian therapist anymore, they got me a therapist who was like militantly against religion. Like militantly, like very angry, very, very angry at religion. I didn't want that either. So I actually said, I don't want that therapist either, because that was, I was not of the F God, F Jesus attitude. Because if I was, I would have kept that therapist, but I didn't. I asked for a different therapist. Being cruel to me, so the therapist saying that they were being cruel to me by not letting me watch porn, that does not, I don't think that ever happened. I maybe there was something about not letting me use the internet privately, which in their minds meant I would watch porn because, well, you know, Josh alone with the internet, clearly he's going to watch adult material. Meanwhile, I'm literally over 19 years old at this point, turning 20 at this stage. And yet I'm still not allowed privacy with the internet. Still. But this I don't think this thing that she just mentioned, I don't think that ever happened.
Now, having your child watch porn in your house.
Having your child watch porn in your house. I was 19 or 20. Like, I just, like, if I were to try to be favorable to this, like, oh my God, your child is watching porn, like, if I had been watching, like, something evil or something illegal or, like, violent or like, I mean, according to my parents' beliefs, even, you know, let's say I was watching, like, LGBT or something like that, like, you know, I mean, not that there, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, if I was watching illegal or violent or what, you know, I can understand that maybe it's like, oh, maybe he's like an evil sociopath or an evil psychopath or something, or like or an addict. Like, let's say I was addicted to it and I was reviewing it all the time. They caught through stuff. I've watched it 3 times, and that was enough. I mean, again, I'm the same person who was raised looking away from the TV when people kissed. So it's clearly because of her trauma and her past that she's this militantly anti-porn and this militantly anti-sex. But anyway.
Told him by not letting him watch porn.
Okay.
Because he wanted to watch porn. Now, having your child watch porn in your house, allowing that, was not something we wanted to do. Because, number one, we felt like that was not appropriate behavior. We thought that was sinful behavior. I mean, we didn't stress it's a sin. We just said we don't want you watching it. It's harmful. It's harmful. There's a lot of studies about it. It's harmful because it distorts your view of what women are. It makes women objects, and sometimes women in those videos and things aren't there on their own free will, and you're.
Which there's my point, is, let's say it was something, you know, so maybe it was recorded against somebody's will, or if it's illegally recorded of people doing, you know, that would be, but the videos that I watched were not that. They were not that.
Again, to some extent, sometimes women in those videos and things aren't there on their own free will, and you're kind of contributing to trafficking to some extent.
Because watching.
Possibly they're there on their free will. It's hard to tell. It's hard to know. You're contributing to that.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to know. Other than, like, all the legal disclaimers at the beginning, and it being like a studio and it being
In my opinion, that possibly they're there in their free will. It's hard to tell. It's hard to know. You're contributing to that industry, and it's just immoral, in my opinion. So that became a very big bone of contention because he wanted the internet to go porn.
so at this stage when I was no longer Christian and I was an adult, it wasn't entirely about porn. It was quite literally about being able to use the internet just privately. And the issue that they had was that it meant I could watch porn. But just even the possibility, just even the capability of it had to be wiped out too. So just there was no internet. This isn't just about porn. It's also about internet privacy and being able to be an adult doing adult free will things. Legal adult free will things.
Just like we were assuming he wanted to. And we said, no, we don't want that. We're not allowing that in our house. And it got to the point where he would say, well, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat if you don't let me watch porn. Things like that.
I never said I'm not going to eat unless you let me watch porn. I did do some minor hunger strikesy sort of things, but this was because they wouldn't let me use the internet privately at all.
Rational things. And at that point, he was becoming somewhat violent. And,
That's a lie.
tried to push his sister downstairs.
I never tried to push my sister downstairs. How dare she lie about that? How dare she? I never, ever did that.
Would just come ranting and waving his arms at you.
Ranting and waving his arms at you. I don't recall ever doing that. I don't recall them ever being worried about that. I would get passionately angry, justifiably. I mean, I was autistic. I didn't realize, and, it would have been nice to understand what an autistic meltdown is, but there was certainly more than enough things to be causing an autistic meltdown. But I was never violent. I never tried to push anyone down the stairs. And I come ranting. That was probably just me being passionately angry, justifiably, waving his arms at you. Waving his arms at you? I mean, I wasn't flapping like a penguin. I wasn't like that kind of autistic. I don't know what she's even referring to there.
Hit me or anything, but stare
Ah.
and
So,
would just come ranting and waving his arms at you. And I mean, never hit me or anything, but
never hit anybody.
I know everybody was afraid that he would. And
Afraid that I would?
he started threatening to kill himself.
Which is also a lie. I mean, I guess if you want to kind of squint at it, the reality of the situation is that I said I felt that they cared so little about me that it might as well be as if I threw myself down the stairs. Like basically trying to paint the picture of this is how little they care about me. This is literally how little that they cared about my feelings at all, about anything.
Porn, we didn't do this, that, and the other thing. And he started threatening to kill himself if we didn't let him watch porn. We didn't do this, that, and the other thing.
I never said I would. I never. And again, I didn't I had never threatened to kill myself, and I certainly didn't do it because they wouldn't let me watch porn. That never was a thing. It was never a thing. Again, I wanted the ability to use the internet privately. To them, that equals wanting to watch porn.
And we, of course, were talking. That's when all that happening actually is being my psychiatrist wasn't because of my background. It was because of dealing with all of this.
She stopped seeing that psychiatrist when that psychiatrist told her that she was using religion as a crutch.
Background as well. And,
Which, isn't that wonderful that she, for the 10 plus years of sexual abuse that she suffered, for the fact that her entire family knew about it, the fact that it was her grandfather who also did her siblings and her cousins. The entire family knew about it, and the entire family did nothing. And when she spoke up about, granted, this is all what she has said. She could be lying about that too. I don't know what of what she's told me over the years is true, in all honesty, from the level of lying that she does in this video. But, from what I understand, her entire family knew about the abuse and did nothing. And when she spoke up about it, they threw her out of the family and turned their backs on her. Which is insane abuse. But she's saying that my situation and everything that I was going through and everything that they were just completely psychologically abusing me over, that's what she needed to go and get therapy over? Not her back. She says, oh, it wasn't my background. And then she throws in, well, my background is too. But she's laying that at my feet because I was having a difficult time with the psychological abuse she was enacting on me. Yeah, what will I say?
See, he lives in a different reality.
Do I?
He will say that we threw him out, but we didn't throw him out. What we did was, we felt that he could not live at our home anymore.
Oh, you didn't throw me out. You felt like I couldn't live at your home anymore. That's a completely different thing. Totally different thing, which, by the way, it was over my demands to be able to use the internet privately. They threw me out at age 20 because, and again, they paint this as, I demand to watch porn, I demand the ability to use the internet privately. That's not saying I'm going to go, again, I touched on this earlier. If it had been the case that, for hours and hours and hours, I was some kind of addict. That's not the case. The reason why they keep painting it as that is because I would say, I want the ability to use the internet alone. And they would say, no, because you're going to watch porn. And I would say, there's nothing wrong with that. If it's private usage of the internet as an adult, that shouldn't be that's not, that's not the issue. It's the issue for them. But again, I was 19 and 20 wanting private usage of the internet.
It was taking such an emotional toll on me and my husband, and although
Oh, it's all about the emotional toll on them.
they were in college, it just was a very, very volatile situation. And it could
It's interesting that she said all the sisters were either married or at college. My sisters, none of them were married at that point. Not until years later.
out you go.
We could have said, out you go.
What we did was, we rented an apartment nearby where he could go to the community college. We gave him a car. We paid.
So it's not throwing your son out if you rent the apartment and give them a car. I don't know. I don't really feel like that fits the description.
At least 2 years of rent an apartment. And, we set him in an apartment nearby, he had a car, he came over and had meals with us.
Which I would at times go and have meals with them because there were things like having to, if there was something that required paperwork that I didn't understand. I mean, even to this day at age 36, I have difficulty getting through paperwork. I have extreme difficulty getting through paperwork, which is kind of ironic given that I've been a math professor and there's an amazing amount of paperwork, but it was all math. And I love math, and math comes easily to me, and finding the mistakes and helping people figure out math was always something that I naturally gravitated towards. But I there were so many things that because they had sheltered me so much and essentially more or less kept me as a child until I was an adult. I mean, I remember being 17 and I was still too afraid to order my own meals at restaurants. So I would tell my parents what food I want and they would order for me because they never like were, okay, it's time for you to grow up and order your own food. So they essentially kept me a child all the way up until college, and then suddenly I was slammed into being bullied and having to deal with everything, and then realizing my parents were terrible and dealing with all of that. So
an apartment, and we sent him in an apartment nearby. He had a car. He'd come over and have meals with us.
So I would still come over and have meals with them because I didn't know. I mean, they kicked me out in 2010, and it took until 2019. It took 9 years of therapy to finally actually use the word abuse to describe all this, because that's how long it took me to figure out what was normal. I had no idea what normal was. I had no idea what not abuse was. I had no idea that this isn't something, I didn't think that every parent did this thing to their kids, but I had no view of what a normal family was. I had no view of what normal society was or the way that people normally treat each other. This was, when 90% of your life is just this family, like I was still going to come over. I was still going to ask for help, because who else was I going to ask for help? I was bullied when I entered the outside world, and I was largely afraid of the outside world. Largely because they raised me to be afraid of the outside world. So this, he'd come over and have meals with us, makes it sound... And not only that, but if you think about it, if it were really true, if I was like, I'm going to try to push my sister down the stairs, I'm going to kill, I'm going to kill myself if you don't let me watch porn. Like, why would they pay for an apartment, give me a car, and have me over for meals? I don't know if this is, see, the thing is, if this were purely delusion, which I do truly believe my mother is delusional. She does, for what one may say about the notion of a religious person experiencing God, she truly believed that she spoke to God and that God spoke to her. I mean, again, this is a thing that pretty much every Christian says, so make of that what you will, but it seemed God was more real to her than I was. So, why? But that's where I began to, but she's very intelligent. I mean, look at the status that she wrote. Look at the status that she wrote. Like, for this video, I moved the earlier video to membership only because there was concern expressed that someone in particular would see it and react. Out of deference, I made it not available to the public. I made it unavailable. I made it not available. It's just like the selectiveness and the choices of words suggest to me malice. It really does. I don't think you can be that delusional, but be this coherent. That's why I mean, the fact that she didn't even delete the video until after my friend called it out. She put it behind a paywall. People paid $2.99 to hear all these lies about my life. But anyway, we continue.
He paid for his, still paid for his college. He could go to college. He's got into,
I should mention what happened with paying for college. So, before I got kicked out, between what went wrong at the end of 2008, which was the first semester, and somewhere in 2009, or actually, yeah, I think it was late 2009, because I had declared that I was no longer Christian. But there came a point where we came to there was a whole quote unquote legal agreement that they wrote up, which was that I go to college, that I get good grades, that I don't remember how many stipulations there were from their side, but I stuck to my end of the bargain. On their end of the bargain was they would pay for like 4 years of college. They I remember there was a brief amount of time that I was allowed to play Xbox online. That's still not an internet browser, but I was allowed some amount of internet in that regard. And they printed out this quote unquote legal agreement that they called it. And I signed it, my parents signed it, my sister signed as a witness. Like this is how far they went with this. They had a witness signature line. And they are the ones that broke the agreement. They are the ones who broke it. Because they rescinded my internet access to play Xbox online. And I don't recall if it was that they had actually allowed me to use internet briefly, like before the whole we're not going to let you look at porn kind of stuff. There may have been a brief period of time where they allowed me to use internet on my iPod Touch. But they went back on it. They revoked the internet in any way, shape, or form. And I forget what else they revoked, but regardless, they broke the agreement. They broke the agreement. I didn't break the agreement. They broke the agreement. And when I said, maybe I should go talk to a lawyer because they're the ones who broke this. I mean, how little I knew and understood about the outside world. I just knew that it was a legal agreement that they broke and that it was wrong. And they said to me that a judge would laugh at it. Or it was either a judge or a lawyer. They said that a judge or a lawyer would laugh at it and say that it meant nothing. So when, there was nothing smooth about this. So the paying for the college was part of that agreement.
Some really good activities there at the college, and things were looking better. But then they periodically would crash.
When they broke the agreement.
We would bail him out. We'd bail him out financially. We'd help him, and we would, still paying for the therapist. They put him on medication, but he wouldn't take it.
I did take the medication. That's a complete lie. I remember they started me off on it was Zoloft, and I was on Zoloft for quite an amount of time. And it wasn't with these kinds of medications, you have to take them over the course of weeks and months because it takes time to build up in your system to become medically effective to actually do what they're supposed to do. Zoloft, unfortunately, has never improved anything for me. All it did was make my legs bounce. Like when I'm sitting down, I was just constantly, like to the point that I would distract people in movie theaters because my legs were always bouncing. I'm like restless. I don't know if it's called restless legs or what the official term for it is, but this medication did nothing for me. So saying I wouldn't take it, I did for a long time until I was like, this is not doing anything. Good days are good, bad days are bad, nothing's different. So I got off of them. And if I remember correctly, I'm not sure if I weaned them off correctly or not, but at some point I was like, this is not the medication. This is not the medication. So they put me on medication that I wouldn't take it is a complete lie.
And we knew we couldn't keep paying for this apartment forever. We just couldn't because we didn't have the financial means to. We were trying to save up, we were trying to save up some money, and my husband was ill and all this stuff.
Husband was ill? Not really to my knowledge. I mean, he has leukemia now, but that's only the last couple of years. So this is talking about around 2010? Maybe it was when he had prostate cancer, but that was dealt with rather easily from what I understand. So my husband was ill? I don't, or at least maybe they didn't tell me. Which I started college in 2008. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2017. Took me 8 years to get my degree because of the amount of therapy and counseling, and as my many therapists and psychologists along the way termed it, I had to essentially reparent myself from the ground up. Completely. So when I went on to get on my bachelor's degree, and my sisters always stayed in the periphery. They weren't there when I needed them. I mean, one of my sisters had some troubles with our parents, but the twins were always, one of the twins is a medical doctor, and the other one has a master's in biochem, and, they married Christian men, and they're, raising children to be Christian, they're the grandchildren to be Christian. And it's like, and it didn't take them 8 years. It took me 8 years. And during this whole 8 years, I was still undiagnosed, untreated autistic ADHD because I thought everybody else had the same chaos in their heads. I really did. I thought that everybody else just dealt with it better. I attributed most of my social difficulties to just my parents, which, again, I'd say it's probably more the case. It's like 75%, 80% of the issues that I had were because of my parents. But the autism and ADHD certainly played their parts. And being undiagnosed, untreated into my adult years, adults didn't get diagnosed with autism back then. They really didn't. I mean, children in the 90s were not nearly diagnosed enough, but as an adult, I certainly was not. So and not only that, but we're skipping over the fact that, they stopped paying for the apartment. She didn't mention how I paid for all the other years of living in the apartment and all the years of college, because they did stop paying for both of those. Fortunately enough, one of my grandparents, one of my parents' my grandparents, one of them passed away and left all of us fairly significant chunks. Granted, the money that I inherited, amazingly enough, ran out right when I finished college. So I finished without any student loans. It was enough to pay for my therapy. It was enough to pay for the apartments. It was enough to pay for car insurance and car payments and everything else. But that was not my parents. And I did work part-time for most of those years because that's all I could handle. But it's really only because I inherited money that I ever made it to the end. I mean, that and the site, you know, all the mental professionals that have helped me along the way. There was a psychologist that I saw for 3 years that I went from, I'm never going to graduate and get any degree, and I'm just going to run out of money and I'm just going to die. I went from that to graduating with a bachelor's and becoming a math professor immediately after. So I went through blood, sweat, and tears to overcome and to reparent myself and to realize that was abuse. And yeah, but anyway, that was up until 2017. We paid for that? What did I just go over? Bullshit. And not only that, but it's bullshit because she even said earlier, well, we had to stop paying for the apartments, you know, we had to stop paying. You were not paying for my education at this point. You weren't. You weren't. I was. With my money that I inherited that had nothing to do with you. It took years and years and years. Why?
When his car died, he gave him another car.
Which is, again, I don't know if, well, this part, I don't know, I just don't know, like, but see, this is the thing. If I were to give the favorable interpretation of she's just delusional and just doesn't remember things, why is she putting this out to 4,000 people? Why is she putting it behind a paywall? Why is she doing this? Because they didn't give me a car at graduation. They gave me the second car because I graduated, not because my first car died. My first car was still functional. I sold my first car as a functional car to people for $4,000. So when they gave me I had two cars. I had two cars for a brief period of time. There was a couple of months I had two cars. So they didn't give me the other car because the first one died. They gave me the second car because I graduated, which was like, I'll take the gift, but it feels really weird. It felt really weird having them come to I mean, it rained the day of graduation and they had a cold, so they didn't go, and I actually didn't even go to my own graduation. But it felt weird that, like, they wanted to go to graduation. Like, they were proud of, like, they had anything to do with that degree other than putting money in. Not to count the fact that it took that many years because the amount of the abuse that they put on me and the years of trauma and the years of having to do the hard work of actually going to therapy, of actually going to psychologists and figuring out how to go forwards. So to say, oh, they gave me a car when the other car died, it's just like, see, this is the kind of lie that's just like, it's gotta be malicious. It's either malicious or it's maliciously delusional, and at that point, it's just a lie. It's just a lie.
We can just try. But in the last, probably worse in the last 5 or 6 years.
Worse in the last 5 or 6 years. So this was 2022 that this audio is from. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2019, which that came upon the manifestation of PTSD and PTSD episodes and PTSD symptoms, like panic attacks where I lost the ability to speak. That all came on because that was the time that I finally went no contact with them. And I foolishly had it in my mind that if I went no contact with them, it would be like, a giant weight lifting off of my shoulders, or at least some kind of weight, some kind of relief that it was over. I mean, granted, again, some of this is, there was contact made later on, but 2019 was when I finally decided to go no contact. And when I realized that there was no weight that got lifted, that's when I truly broke down, because it didn't matter. It didn't matter that they were gone. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter going no contact. And realizing that that was not bringing any relief broke me, because it meant it was stuck on me. It was tattooed inside of me, despite all the years of therapy and hard work. So that's when it got worse. So it's 3 years. I mean, if she wants to say 5 or 6, maybe it's because the more honest I became with myself, the more, and 2019 was when I finally was able to start using the word, hey, this was abuse. I didn't, and when I say that, I don't mean it in the context of I would say it to them. I meant it in the context of I didn't feel right using the word abuse until I realized what it truly was. And it took that many years of therapy and professionals. It would have been so easy for some therapist in the beginning to be like, oh, your parents are abusive. And then I'd be like, oh no, my parents are abusive. No, I resisted that because I thought that everything they did was out of love. But it turns out a lot of it was out of fear and out of trauma that they did not work on, that they did not handle, and instead just, went the other direction so hard it became abusive in the other direction. But anyway, 5 or 6 years.
Just became like delusional, I would think is the word. He tells everybody that his father and I and his sister are horrible people that threw him out, which isn't true because we got him, we put him up in an apartment for 2 years.
So it's not throwing your son out if you put them up in an apartment for 2 years. Got it. And also in terms of the sister's business, I mean, that's a whole other thing in of itself. But I mean, I mentioned the sister diminishing the abuse. There was another sister who agreed to visit with me and my therapist, but only if we met because she lived I think she lived 2 hours away. And I think it was a psychologist. It was a psychiatrist or psychologist, one of the two. But he was a doctor. He was a doctor tier something. He was like in his 70s. And my sister was like, I'll meet with you and your therapist if we meet halfway, like locationally. So instead of coming to the doctor's office where my mid-70s doctor is, she's like, oh, we can meet somewhere like an hour between the two of us, just so she can say she offered. That's not an offer. That's not an offer. That is a lie. And the third sister, I feel like we were both autistic ADHD, and our wavelengths were such that we would just break out in arguments almost instantly anytime we had conversations. She had her own issues too. I mean, she had PTSD to the extent of she would have panic attacks trying to do the dishes. Which, I mean, to be fair, I'm not perfect with doing dishes either, but I don't have panic attacks with them. I mean, regardless, my sisters weren't there for me when I needed them, but they weren't like my parents for sure, but there's reasons why I'm no contact with them as well.
And he, at the time he did go back to live in a college and had roommates, but every time he's had a roommate, it has not worked out well because he becomes angry.
This is This is not true. This is not fucking true. So when I had roommates at the unit, because I got my 2-year degree at a community college, and then I transferred to a 4-year institution, and I lived on campus at the 4-year institution. It was a suite with, it was 4 of us. It was me and 3 others. It wasn't because I was angry. It wasn't because, as the captions show, the next thing she's about to say, he throws large items at people. That's complete horseshit. What was truly the case was 2 out of the 3 people in my suite were complete assholes. One of them was, and he was actually a male model. Like, he was, front of magazines tier model, and every single girl in the building was always after him. The most vain, vapid, fake blonde, fake everything people who were partiers, and he was just a moronic asshole. And his friend, the other asshole, was this gym bro finance major who the both of them always got wasted, and they were complete assholes. I was just the math major in the corner, while these morons were complete assholes. And nothing, and there's literally nothing about anybody throwing anything at anybody. Like, this is just like, is this delusion that's inventing stuff? Because there's delusion that's like, okay, now you just like got the story wrong or twisted. This is just straight up invention. But again, it all is like a clean, tight narrative where there's a fair amount of things that are true. I mean, I haven't when there's things that she says that are true, like either I've already confirmed it, or I confirm it afterwards, or I just don't say anything of those parts because they're true. But like, this is just straight up false. And the fact that it all feeds this narrative that I'm this mentally ill person who gets violent. It's like, none of that is fucking true. None of that is fucking true. None of it. None of it. The worst thing I've ever done, other than yelling, which, to be fair, I can be a yeller. I can yell. I can get angry. That is true. I feel like I get angry most of the time because of justified reasons. But again, the worst thing I've ever done is throwing a pillow against the wall. I don't throw things because, number one, I don't want to break things. I don't want to hurt people. Vocally, I've hurt some people. I've said some pretty sharp words. I feel like they're at people who deserve them, but I do not throw objects at people. I do not throw large items at people. I'm not violent. I didn't try to push my sister down the fucking stairs. That didn't happen. That did not happen. Like, they didn't even know what happened with me and those roommates. Well, according to you, it's always me. You're one to talk about not taking responsibility. Really.
I don't know what word I want. But it's gotten to the point where he lives in a different state now.
I was in Pennsylvania at the time.
He is living with his girlfriend who isn't well herself.
She had schizophrenia.
He has run up a tremendous amount of debt.
So I used AI generated captions as death. I was like, whoa, no, a tremendous amount of debt, which really at that time wasn't really.
He does smoke marijuana. I don't know what else he does.
I did marijuana, and that's it. And why? Because it was legal, and I only ever purchased it legally, and it was the one. And I've been on Zoloft, I've been on Prozac, I've been on Fexor, I've been on, like, there's a whole laundry list of SSRIs and SNRIs and things that have been tried on me. None of them have helped. Marijuana was the only thing that helped. It was the only thing that helped, at least up until that point. Thankfully, I'm on better medication now. I'm no longer on marijuana, but back then it was the only thing that helped. It was the only thing that could pull me out of a PTSD episode that I would be trapped in. And ADHD and autism with hyperfocuses can feed into the PTSD, and my brain is just unable to leave, and it's just pure suffering. But a puff of marijuana, and I was free of it. So, I mean, it's like anybody who actually uses marijuana knows that, like, that's, especially someone with PTSD who uses marijuana knows that this is just whatever. I don't know what else he does. I didn't do anything else.
He says he has all of these problems because we were horrible parents.
Which also, by the way, something that I should mention that is important for the timeline. This video that she posted with this audio was in March of 2022. In 2019 is when I made the realization, wait a second, I've had autism this entire time. And I came to that realization because there was a show on Netflix about a teenage boy who has autism. And I was like, why do I identify with this character so much and not so much with anybody else around him? And then I started looking into it, and I was like, oh, maybe that's why I couldn't make eye contact until the age of 23. Maybe that's why I was a late speaking child. Like, suddenly the whole thing made sense to me. And that's when I realized that. And getting diagnosed for autism as an adult is incredibly difficult. But I had told them, hey, I've figured it out. I've had autism. Notice how she's never mentioned the word autism. She goes, oh, did a doctor tell you that? Despite the fact that it's incredible. I've spent years trying to get diagnosed for autism as an adult. In fact, there was a whole entire program that it took about 2 months to finally see the actual psychiatrist. And the actual psychiatrist sits across from me and says, nobody tests for adults. Nobody tests adults for autism. And I just wanted to, I wanted to scream at him and say, that's not fucking true. But no, I got up, I said, thank you, doctor, and I left, and I never came back to that doctor. And just every time something like that happens, it takes the wind out of my sails. Nothing is a straightforward, straight line path for me, unfortunately, due to the autism. The ADHD, I think I realized that in 2021. And I did get diagnosed. I am diagnosed ADHD. So, and also no mention of the diagnosed PTSD from 2019 either. So, like, when she says, oh, he has all these problems because he says he has all these problems. I have diagnosed PTSD. I have diagnosed ADHD. I have all but diagnosed autism. These are, and at the time I did also recognize that, hey, some of that was more the issue than I realized in terms of social difficulties, and I had blamed all my social difficulties on them. But I wasn't entirely wrong. I was mostly right. But all these problems because we were horrible pain. Yeah.
He says he has all of these problems because we were horrible parents. And to him, horrible parents means we took you to church.
Which is a lie. I never said there were horrible parents because they took me to church. That is a fucking lie. I have never said that. Again, all the way until 19, as a college student, I was like, I mean, maybe it was out of view of them. But I tell you, I was saying that sex outside of marriage is a sin, and I was I was trying to be a good Christian boy, and in fact, they had put the condition that I must make Christian friends, I must go to church in order to stay at college to begin with. I never said they were horrible parents because they took me to church. That's just a lie. That is a lie. I never said it was horrible that they took me to church, ever.
A lot of the families, there's Catholic families, there's Jewish families, there's Muslim families, there's Mormon families, there's all kinds of families that take their children to church. That's what they do. And then when their children get older, they choose to go to church or they choose not to go to church. That's what we did. That's not an awful thing.
That was never. I never. What I took issue with was the fact that I never got to choose. That Christianity, it's fundamentally supposed to be a choice. That was everything that I learned growing up. If there's one thing I learned from Christianity, is it's supposed to be a choice. And if you don't, you got to choose to let Jesus in your heart, whatever. That was my contention with it. It was never that we had to go to church. I never complained about the fact that we had to go to church. That was never even a thing. It was never even a thing. And his sisters are just horrified. That's a lie, too. She's lying about what my sisters are saying, too. And no, they did not have the same childhood. They didn't have to look away from the TV when people kissed. I did.
The fact that we
Didn't want me to have internet privately as an adult.
We didn't say, you're dirty, whatever, you're dirty sinner, whatever. We never said anything about it. We just said,
No, you got me. Granted, they claim, we didn't know the counselor was going to say that your anxiety and your depression were your sin. They try to say that, but guess what? You still got me that counselor.
in our house. That's all we said. And he just thinks that is just like one of the worst things you could do. But
No.
he doesn't understand that we have a great faith in God, and we want to live our lives as honoring to God, and we don't feel like just allowing that in our home. If he wants to watch it somewhere else,
It's not like okay, it's another thing. Let's say I was watching it with the speakers full blast, or watching it with the door open, or masturbating within view of any, none of that happened. None of that ever happened. None of that ever happened.
but it just wasn't very, very, very.
Oh yeah, see, there's a mention. Oh, that I was an adult.
That in our home. If he wants to watch it somewhere else, it's his prerogative. He's an adult. But it just wasn't very, very, very bad. Very heartbreaking. Very, very bad scene. Because he and I were very close, and
We were close.
he has.
Now all you do is lie about me. For money. For views. And then she deleted it when it got called out.
She belittles my.
I belittle her child. That is not fucking true. That is not fucking true. Threatened you? That's not fucking true either. From this entire thing, have I ever said that nothing. I've never threatened them.
So these last few months, we have somewhat reconnected with him. And I have made sure that he has food. I have gotten food for him numerous times because he has no money. Because he has to have a job. Because he won't look for a job.
I'm trying to remember if they ever bought food for me. I think she might have a few times, but that was... So the situation was, I was unemployed. I was still very much dealing with PTSD. I was living with my girlfriend at the time in Pennsylvania, in an area that I didn't know, not with my education contacts, not with my education sphere, not with my friends. It was during the pandemic, so I didn't really... Like, the first week I moved to Pennsylvania, it was the first week of the lockdowns. So wasn't exactly able to thrive or figure things out there. And in the background of when this is all going to hell, my girlfriend, who at the time, now my ex, but at the time, and she had schizophrenia, the actual condition, she was in the mental hospital and was there for actually a period of 9 months. And during those 9 months, it came to the point where getting evicted, because I didn't have money, I didn't have a job, she was literally in the mental hospital. So it fell apart. So I think they may have paid for numerous times, make it sound like a lot. I tried looking for a job. I did. I had a caseworker who was literally trying to find a way to help me get employed, because I was having difficulty getting employed. Because when I'm inside a job, I'm fine. When I'm outside of a job, everything falls apart, because my autism, my ADHD, it's like I am in zero gravity, flailing my limbs, and the whole back and forth of applying and then waiting for a response and then calling back, I fall through the cracks. So to say that I wasn't looking for a job is false. That is false.
My husband and I have, we have told him of places near where he lives that he can go for help. And he can go, there's food pantries, there's also people that can go, that can help him with rent assistance, there's people that can help him, with the mental illness issues he has, because we're not qualified to do that.
Yeah, you're not qualified to help with the PTSD that you caused. For reference, they listed a whole bunch of Christian organizations nearby that were potentially helpful. I was going through too much PTSD that is heavily intertwined with religious trauma from all this, because religious trauma is a proper term to use in a situation such as this. So it broke me to, like, I wasn't gonna go seek help at St. Mary's, because I couldn't mentally handle the idea of going to some people that helped me because, oh, God wants us to help. No, I don't want Christian help. I know there are good Christians out there, and I'm not anti-Christian, I'm not anti-religious, but I just have too much trauma from, because, like, the thing is like, people saying, oh, God wants me to do this, that triggers me. People saying, oh, Jesus loves you, that triggers me, because the Jesus love that I grew up understanding was extremely isolating and psychologically abusive. So, I mean, because of my trauma, I get triggered when I look at photos of happy families, because that's not what I had. That died from years ago. I mean, I've had friends call me a brother to them. I've had friends call me a nephew to them. That doesn't someone calling me their, like, people who have been my brother have been terrible to me. People who've called me son have been terrible to me. So that it just, when someone says that, it's out of love. I understand that, and I rationally understand where that's coming from, but I tense up. I tense up because only someone who is family can truly hurt you in a way that nobody else can. Especially since there are people with healthy notions of family where family is always there for you, or family is always something to fall back. I have no family. My family left me behind a long time ago.
We don't know what to do. But what it's kind of all come to the head now. We knew it would at some point because we just knew it was coming. But he's at the point where now he's been evicted and he has a week or so, and he expects us to fix it. And we can't. We can't fix it. The last
You
time
broke
we
it.
tried to get him to go see somebody, get someone to help him.
I've had people try to help me. Years I've been having people help me.
And spoken with my daughter, spoken with our daughters, and they're in total agreement with us. They say,
That's a complete lie, by the way. After this video, and after I discovered the video, and after I reached out to my sisters about having found the video, I mean, granted, I forget if it was right after my mom posted. Well, no, not even. Sometime after posting this video, either between that and when I found it and called it out, or it might have been after I found it and called it out. But regardless, I know that there are sisters of mine who called my mom and yelled at her for this video because it's insane. It's literally insane. So this like, oh, all my daughters are great. It's like, she's such a fucking liar.
too much for him, more than we should have, and maybe they're right. But at this point, I can't fix that. I can't take it back. But I think we're at the point we just have to let it go. We just have to.
Have you character assassinated me enough yet?
And
Leave it to God.
I don't. It's hard. It's hard when your child says, "You're not my mother," and
I really wish she wasn't, and I have said that she's.
and I'm not your son.
I haven't felt. This is not. A mother does not do this to a son. A mother who loves her son does not do that to them. It's been my whole life. It's been my whole life. It even took me 4 years to get to the point where I could make this video about what you said about me in 2022, lying about my life over and over and over and over. Oh, he's mentally ill. Tried to push his sister downstairs. He's got to watch porn. It's like all of it is just lie after lie after lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. Lies. And it's all what? To say to her 4,000 people online who are all in her comments saying, "You're such a wonderful Christian mother. You're such a wonderful Christian grandmother. Oh, you're so sweet. You're so cute. I love your videos. You're so sweet." But she goes and spins and not only that, but it's not even just like that, maybe, there's large chunks of it that are right or whatever. No, it's like every single step, every single line is a lie. Every single line. Every single line is twisted or said in a different way or saying I throw things at people and I'm violent. None of it is true. None of it. It's all just to make her Yas Queen Christian viewers all non-agreements. Oh, you're such a strong woman, Gina. You're such a strong woman for dealing with such a horrible son, such a mentally ill, violent, delusional, which again, remember, it's like, oh, we stopped paying for 2 years, and he was so evil, he threatened to throw, and he demanded to watch porn. It's like, oh, and then we still let him come over for meals. She's the mentally ill one. I mean, yeah, sure, I've got PTSD and autism and ADHD and major depression. These are... I'm not schizophrenic. I don't have delusional thinking. I don't see things that aren't there. I don't hear things that aren't there. I've worked for over 10 years. For over 10 years, I worked. More than that. I was a professor for several years. These are not like, if I was some crazy violent lunatic, I mean, I guess some professors might be capable of that, but I'm not, like, nobody that actually knows me thinks of me as a violent person. The worst thing that people have maybe witnessed seeing me do is punching myself, punching my legs, bashing my head against the wall. That was how things happened in terms of any sort of injury being caused was me to myself. I never hurt anybody. I've never touched anybody in any sort of way. And I never broke anything. I never threw large objects. I threw a pillow against a wall.
Things and calling us all sorts of names that I can't repeat here. And
I don't even really think I used horrible names.
helping him with money and helping him with food and things, it's all good. And he's nice. And I see a glimpse of who he was. But once we can't give him any money, we can't give him any money. It's like a whole different person.
I mean, to be honest, when you're assisting me and helping me, yeah, it kind of feels like you broke my life multiple times. I didn't even go into, so when my PTSD showed up in 2019, it happened when I was teaching 3 classes, tutoring 20 hours a week, and taking a full graduate school course load. So 3 500 level maths, teaching 3 basic math courses at a community college, and tutoring, which, by the way, the tutoring was a graduate assistantship. I was going to graduate school for free. All I had to do was tutor 20 hours a week, which was something I was already doing. And when my PTSD showed up, I barely got across the finish line for those classes the ones that I was teaching. I barely made it into December because everything was going through my head. And again, thankfully the panic attacks didn't happen while I was in the classroom, but I mean, I have quite literally made instrumental music about how warped it was to have to just like turn on a smile and because as a teacher, if you enter that classroom sad, your students are going to be sad. If you enter that classroom, you have to bring the positive energy. You have no choice. And having to do that with everything that was going in my head, I elected to not teach the next semester, and in fact I have not taught since. I mean, the pandemic started and I moved to Pennsylvania, and that certainly didn't make getting back into education easy, but I stopped teaching after that semester. The middle of that semester, when the panic attacks were happening, I resigned the graduate assistantship. I stopped the classes. I stopped the graduate school, so I had to drop out of graduate school, and a graduate assistantship, which only like 3 or 4 people got at the entire university. So that's why when I say that they ruined my life twice, that was the second time that they ruined it. Because even though it was 2019, and even though I was like 30 years old, my entire life collapsed because of the PTSD they caused. So, forgive me for feeling like the help they were giving me was something that I honestly already deserved from them, but again, they don't acknowledge the PTSD. They don't acknowledge that they caused it. The most that I've ever gotten from them is, oh, maybe we shouldn't have homeschooled you, but that's not even 5%. And even then, if they were just not abusive and psychologically controlling, homeschooling would have probably been more fine. But they were not, and it was not.
And we can't give them any more. We can't give them any money. It's just like a whole different person.
Same person.
And it's hard.
Oh, what happened to the... Something happened to the captions. Is that it?
It's like a whole different person.
Okay.
A whole different person. And
Something happened to the audio.
with money, they help them with food and things. It's all good. And
Okay, there's some overlap with the audio. When my friend gave it to me, it was chopped up into 3 pieces.
it's like a whole different person. It's a whole different person, and
No, it's just the person who traumatized, who broke my life.
it's hard to know how much is going on and how much is just manipulation. And kind of all those are all narcissists. Like,
I don't know what's happened to the captions, I'm sorry.
definitions. And it's heartbreaking to know that most likely he will be on the street. But technically, he's not safe. When we had switches at our house before, we had a little dog here, a little dog. And I never left it alone, the dog is gone. And I can't have him here, I can't have him around the grandchildren.
I have no idea what the dog mention is. It's insane. I don't even know what she's saying here.
Trying to keep reaching out, and I'm the only one that's trying to send things like that. And they said, maybe he's gonna get hurt. But it's hard not to. It's hard not to.
Like, she takes me speaking about reality as I'm hurting her.
And when we last spoke with him, he had said we were gonna have to school entirely, even though
I don't know what.
But he's saying, I guess because he felt in the past that he's treating him, but there's only so much you can do. And yes, he knows that, well, yes, he knows that I know he wants to help me.
I don't know, the audio, the transcription is being weird.
But
I don't know where they live. I don't want to know where they live. I've never shown up at their house. There's no I've never threatened to show up at their house. I've never threatened, like, she's painting a narrative. She's like, it's just, I'm a mentally ill, violent person that is going to show up at any time and throw large objects at them, when that's all a lie. It's literally. Oh, yeah, the similar people with similar experiences. Similar experiences to a complete lie.
I don't know what you can do to help someone that doesn't mean they have a problem. Or if they do have a problem, it's all because of
I don't know.
whatever you say. Nothing was a, and he was told again to clean his room or he would go to martial arts class, and that's horrible.
The audio is so quiet. This third part is having issues, so I apologize for that.
All you can do is pray and hope that they'll look for help. And I told him almost every day. These are the people here that can help you. These are people right in your area that will help you.
Oh, she's the one who tried to help, tried to save me from my own evil, mentally ill, violent self. And then this is where it ends. She says thank you a bunch of times in a row. What? And I'm about to become homeless again. I mean, the other time in 2022, I was homeless for less than a day. I went to the mental hospital, and because I couldn't figure things out, and thankfully I figured things out. I came out of there with a recommendation for a job, and I came out of there with a place to rent. But because of all my difficulties, I've been out of work since July. And whether it's my difficulties where I'm like floating in 0G and I can't focus, the executive dysfunction that I have is beyond what I can handle. There are times my focus gets so locked on something that I'll make dinner at 5 p.m. and even though my stomach is eating itself, I don't eat it until 10 or 11. because that's what my focus does. Even though I want to go and eat, sometimes I'll even have to remake dinner because that's how long the food has been sitting there. I have extreme difficulty keeping a clean living space because the energy and mental effort it takes to force myself to clean is intense and overwhelming. I burn out doing things for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And I'm in treatment. I have a therapist. I have a psychiatrist. And I've tried to make it work. But I'm about to be evicted again. And I can't handle homelessness. I really can't. So, I felt like that with whatever happens to me in the next few weeks, I felt like I needed to make this video. Just set the record straight. Because I've gone to the mental hospital over this. If I had the wherewithal and the money at the time, I would have sued her. The amount of slander, the amount of malice, the consciousness of realizing that it was problematic, the fact that people called her out on it, my sister yelled at her for it, the fact that she knew it was problematic and instead of getting rid of it, she put it behind a $2.99 paywall for the slander fest about Josh's life. And anybody in my professional career, anybody in my personal life, have never known me to be anything but peaceful, thoughtful, considerate, not insane, not some kind of porn addict, violent lunatic. Something that she says, oh, we worry about him showing up and we'd have to call the police. It's like, she's just this isn't what a mother does to a child. This isn't what a family does. Not one that's healthy. Not one that's godly. That's just the way it goes, I guess, sometimes.